Okay, so it's more than the 5 I thought we had, so that's a little better.
Okay. Just to give you a little overview of what we have planned here, our goals are to get to know farmers better, understand the complexities and challenges of farming today, and to build bridges to find workable solutions to our common climate challenges. We're going to start out with about 2 minutes for each of you so you can tell us a little bit about yourself. I'll hopefully won't get you mixed up here. Mr. Jerry Ackerman is down at the far end. He farms over at Lakefield. I think he lives in Lakefield or by Lakefield. John Bedger. Okay. He's a farmer and seed dealer from Spirit Lake. Eric Coyne farms and is a local realtor from Spirit Lake. Kate Mendenhall is Spirit Lake. She's involved in many things, some organic farming and actively involved in farming. And Scott Mitchell is an electrician and a farmer, and he lives over kind of in the northwest part of the county, over close to Lake Park, I believe. So I guess with that, we'll as soon as I give you a little bit more of an overview here, we'll give you about 2 minutes each to kind of tell us a little bit more about your operations and kind of what got you into farming, what is most rewarding to you and your family about farming, and then we'll have 3 minutes each from each panelist to respond to addressing the following questions. How does farming change in the time you've been farming? And I know I go back quite a few years, and I haven't been on the farm since probably the 70s, early 70s, when I left for college. But things have changed since that time in my lifetime, and I know things are moving a lot faster. What is most challenging for you, and what have you learned from these challenges? Then we'll have, eventually we'll have a breakout. We'll break out into 5 groups. 2 of the groups will be over at the library, which is just to the west here. And I believe Mindy is going to be kind of going over there. We'll be circulating around, and we're going to have each panelist form a group. So we'll have 5 tables, and we've got a little exercise of a handout here, and you'll do some brainstorming and try to come up with what you hope or you think is the most challenge of how we should approach these challenges and how to find some solutions. So that's kind of what's in store for the last half hour, and we'll get back together and have a discussion. So with that, I'll
do one more housekeeping point. We have index cards for questions, so at any time, just flag call down, I'll hand you an index card and a pencil if you don't already have something right there.
Okay, so who wants to go first?
Repeat the question for me.
Okay. The question is, what got you into farming, and what is most rewarding to you and your family, after you give us a little bit more background about what you're doing?
As I said, I'm Scott Mitchell. Actually grew up on the farm I live on, between Spirit Lake and Lake Park, graduated Harris Lake Park. I'm 4th generation farming ground, and my 2 siblings are owners of ground that's been in the family 118 years this month. So that's obviously something I take quite a bit of pride in. Wife teaches at Spirit Lake. I've got a couple daughters who've been married and some grandkids. Pretty much been doing very little tillage since 1988. We moved into a strip till or ridge till actually situation, which is kind of an offshoot or a little different than no-till, but have kind of evolved today to where I'm, if you were out there today, you'd see soybeans that were no-till drilled into standing stocks, and my corn's planted with using a strip till, one trip ahead of the planter to till 10-inch strip ahead of the planter, playing into that. So, I've got ground since '88 that hasn't, some of it's not had any full wet tillage done in that time. Made that move back then, the '80s were tough, and I was looking to try and save money on equipment, buying big equipment, and obviously in the upside of that had been, seeing the benefits of an improved soil quality, and less soil erosion, better water infiltration over time. So it's been a good move. Spent 14 years as Dickinson County Soil and Water Conservation District Commissioner, involved right now with Silver Lake Watershed Project over at Lake Park. So that's made a lot of changes when you talk tillage and that over the years. Tried a lot of different things, but that's where I'm at today. So as far as farming, it's something I always wanted to do, I guess, from when I was young. I've got a grandson that's the same way. We were out riding around the tractor today, it's always what I wanted to do. I've always loved it. Kind of accidentally backed my way into the electrical business, working for some people when we got out of livestock, and I enjoy that too. So I have the challenges of running two businesses, and it is a challenge some days. What's the other part of that question?
That's enough for,
Okay.
and let's travel.
My name's John Betcher, and I farm about 2 miles west of Big Spirit. So I've been in the Lakes watershed, and kind of like Scott, I grew up on the farm I'm on. My folks moved to this farm in 1967, but my grandparents bought it in 1936. So our farm has evolved. We started out primarily dairy and hogs on our farm, just farming a quarter section. I got out of dairy in '97, got into some beef cows, and I rented some ground right adjacent to Little Spirit. About 98, 99, I started strip till like Scott's doing, and I've been strip till and no till on all my acres ever since. We actually bought some equipment, and we do custom strip till work for other farmers. I started on cover crops about 5 years ago, just kind of trying to learn that. I think it takes a while to really get a system down, but we've created some of our own equipment in order to seed cover crops into standing corn. We tried it for the first time this year. It appears to be successful at this point, but I'd really like to go through the rest of the season and into next year before I really know how well that works. But I like what I see right now. We'll be seeding more next year. I've got my daughter in my farming operation with me. I've got a seed business. I sell DeKalb and Hasbro Monsanto seed products. Monsanto being a technology leader, I kind of embrace technology. Our equipment, we use a lot of technology. We have what's called RTK steering, which is plus or minus 1 inch. We can plant on the same strip year after year if we want. On our strip till, we knife in fertilizer in the fall, and that's the only tillage we do. The following spring, with our guidance, we sit right on top of that fertilizer. That's where we plant our corn, about 2 inches above the band of fertilizer we placed in the soil. And then we have yield mapping on our combine. We variable rate plant our crops, so we have higher populations in the low ground where we get the biggest returns, and we pull the population back on the hills so we get better stalk quality, and the average is probably better yields overall. But like I say, we embrace technology. We're trying to produce as much as we can with the resources we have and still be sustainable into the future. Try to improve it with cover crops and livestock manure and that kind of thing. I'm like Scott. I grew up farming and I love it. So that's why I'm where I'm at. And I'm thrilled that my daughter's farming with me.
John and I are similar but different. First of all, I guess we have different names. My name's Eric Coyne. Similarities, both John and I are graduates of Iowa State University, Spirit Lake High School, and we both lived here all our lives. But our differences come in where John is an active farmer. I was raised in a real estate family, and that's my occupation, real estate broker, but also a landowner. And as a result of being a landowner over the years, start paying attention to some different things. and come across something that I'm pretty excited about and jazzed up about, that I think makes a lot of sense for a lot of people all over the Midwest. So, like I say, we've been, STRIPS is what I'm talking about, and so many acronyms in today's world. Science-based trials, integrated row prairie strips. It's just way too much stuff. Basically, it's just edge of field prairies, and I'll explain later why I'm so excited about it, but it's something that's been under study for the last 10 years by Iowa State University, and it just seems to make a lot of sense on so many fronts. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kate Mendenhall, and I grew up here in Okoboji Spirit Lake area, and have many generations in the area as well, but I did not grow up in a farm family, but I always wanted to be a farmer. And I grew up in the farm crisis here, and so it wasn't really an encouraged career. When I mentioned to my dad's uncle that I wanted to be a farmer and he had a family seed business, he said, you should choose something else. So I studied biology, and I left and I went to college on the East Coast, and I met a lot of organic farmers at farmers markets and started asking a lot more questions, and I found organic farming, that's really what I want to do. But still wasn't sure if I could be a farmer because I didn't grow up farming. You just learn from that whole livelihood of helping out on the farm. So I am a beginning farmer. My husband and I moved back 3.5 years, and we bought a small farm. And we're transitioning it to organic, so we're just now in our 3rd year of transition, and we will be raising pastured chickens and pigs and hopefully some beef cows down the line, rotational grazing, mixed species grazing, and we've returned it all to perennial pasture with a very diverse seed mix with a lot of native grasses and plants. But I also do policy work, because when I wasn't sure I could be a farmer, I was like, well, I want to help farmers, because when I started in school, we had many farming kids in my class, and by the time I graduated, there was maybe 2. So I had a big impact on me, and I wanted to find a way for families to stay farming and to stay farming in Iowa. And so I've been working for my whole professional career, creating policies and professional development to help small family farmers make viable farms and help sustainable environments and healthy communities. And so I currently now work for the Iowa Organic Association. I'm the director, so we do state level policy and professional development for farmers. And I also am the director of a new national organization called the Organic Farmers Association. So we work with all certified organic farmers across the country, listening to what their policy priorities are, and then giving farmers a voice in Washington, D.C. So I've been doing some work on the Farm Bill too. But what I really like is also getting my hands dirty and working with animals and growing food for my community. So what I love most about farming is that physical aspect of farming and growing food that I can share with my friends and family and people who I don't even know yet but become my friends because I've been feeding their families with food. So last year we sold our first batch of meat birds, and just the stories I got back about kids who loved chicken more than they've ever loved chicken before, but they've never tasted real chicken before. That's the stuff that makes me so excited about what we're doing. And I have a 4-year-old who gets up at 6 a.m. ready to go do farm chores with me, and that multi-generation. I work on the farm with my dad and my mom and my husband, and all of us working together, I think, is just a really special thing that's rare these days, and doing that to grow healthy food for a community is really motivating.
Hi, my name is Jerry Ackerman, and I'm here with my wife Nancy, who's in the back, and we live just north of here, about 25 minutes at Lakefield, Minnesota. We farm approximately 1,200 acres. That is split between corn, soybeans, and alfalfa, so we're a little bit different. The technology is probably what I would say is the biggest change, because when I grew up, the tractors didn't have cabs. Well, then we had cabs, but it didn't do so good for your hearing. Now we've got climate control in our tractors. And like John, we're doing the variable rate planting. We're doing the strip till. I think we've been at it 18 or 19 years. And of course, we do no-till soybeans. One of the amazing things we've found, I'm always trying new things, and we've done several studies with the University of Minnesota and with our watershed, In fact, this year, we're just finishing up a 5-year study with our watershed on nitrogen and phosphorus reduction by using cover crops. And it was kind of amazing. They were out there just a few weeks before this rain, and they said, well, we did our last 1-hour water infiltration test. I said, well, what did we learn? Well, she said, if it started raining right now today, it could rain 11 inches in 1 hour, and there wouldn't be a drop of water standing on the surface. Fortunately, since this is a 5-year study, the first year, which was the first year for cover crops on that field, and I thought I'd been doing a good job with no-till and strip-till, and they did a 1-hour water infiltration test. I said, how did we turn out on that one? 8 inches in 1 hour. So we've improved it in 5 years. The other thing, we noticed quite a bit of, and we've got a study going with NRCS and Pheasants Forever this year, and I wouldn't have noticed it, but the last few years, when Nancy gets to the last round with the combine, we're seeing 20 to 30 pheasants fly out. And I never thought too much about it. Well, that's good, you know. We're seeing good pheasant population, good for the wildlife, because we're doing interseeding into our corn early, and we have all of our acres with cover crops. But then I had to go help a person whose father-in-law had cancer, and he was behind. And he said, I have to come with my combine and semis and everything. And he said, I've really got enough equipment. I just need somebody intelligent to run that combine. So for a week and a half to for 2 weeks, I ran his combine, but it was like, oh, we're getting to the end of the field. Maybe there's a pheasant. Oh, we got 2 out of this field. And I thought something was going on, and I actually told the guys from Pheasants Forever, you know, you ought to be paying us. Well, somehow word got back around, and they're doing a study this year, and they've had wildlife cameras in our fields, and they've even got a drone now, so as we harvest our corn, they're gonna try and document some of that. So that's kind of fun. You know, I guess I grew up in farming, I love it. Nancy's asked me one day, she said, what are you gonna do when you retire? And I said, heck, I'm retired. I'm having fun, I'm doing everything I wanna do, I'm trying new experiments. You know, I think it's great, especially these cover crops. We started that 8 or 9 years ago with a test plot, and it's kind of grown. We've done studies with our watershed. About 4 years ago, where we've been buying our seed, they said, you can't no longer buy your seed here. And I said, well, why not? Well, you're buying direct from the warehouse. I said, so what's this handful of guys around here supposed to do? Well, you're the new representative for La Crosse Seed here. And I thought, okay, I don't really advertise, it's word of mouth, and we're just trying to help people and give them a good price. This fall, we surpassed 10,000 acres of cover crop seed in this area that went out. So it's growing. I do think the programs they have to get people started, like through NRCS and Soil and Water, are great. Also the CSP contracts, because a lot of guys wouldn't try these covers if those incentives were there. What I'm seeing is people who try them, maybe they don't got enough money for 80 acres. On a couple of years, all of a sudden they're doing 150 acres. And then I get a few guys that come in and said, after 1 year, we're doing it all. So, you know, I understand what you're working at here for this cap and trade. We actually were participating in that, I believe it was about 8 years ago. And we were getting paid in for our conservation tillage. I think it's an incentive that will help. And some guys will probably never change, just ingrained in their blood. You know, this is the way it's done, we're not gonna change, it don't work. But it's kind of comical because everybody's always driving by to see what Jerry's up to in the neighborhood, you know, and then pretty soon there's another guy doing it. So it's, that's the way we do it, and I guess that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Catching.
I'm hearing a lot of innovation on this panel, and already heard some of how things have changed for you in the time you've been farming. So the next question is really, what's kind of the biggest challenge you have in trying to change, or what kind of barrier do you run into when you want to try something new? What stops you from trying something new when you have a new idea? Or if not you, what stops your fellow farmers from trying things that you're already trying? You know?
I'd say generally, a lot of the farmers are a little resistant to changing towards the cover crops or some of the conservation issues because they were raised doing what they're doing. And they've got the equipment base to do what they do. You have to make some modifications to go to strip till. Our custom business, we charge $18 an acre for custom strip tilling. Well, if you've got 500 acres, that's a big chunk of cash you gotta lay out to somebody else on an annual basis to stop doing the tillage. And they've already got the equipment, and most of our farmers in this area are pretty successful doing what they're doing. So to ask them to take on a different conservation measure, they're not sure whether they're gonna be successful with it or not, so they're a little hesitant to try very much at all at first. But the idea that they've got to upgrade equipment or modify equipment in order to deal with it, or add more either tillage passes or spray passes to manage it, a lot of people are pushing back on that. No, that's not for me. If I visit with people, I get a lot of, well, why don't you try it and we'll see how it goes. But a few of them have taken on cover crops and the like after seeing other people do it, but the trend is pretty slow. The other thing is today, as of right now, commodity prices are at a multi-year low, and there isn't a lot of extra cash in farmers' pockets. So to ask them to say, well, why don't you invest $30, $40 an acre in cover crops and see if you can help conserve your soil and build your soil health and do the right thing, they're not going to get all $40 back if they invest it up front. It's a long-term investment, and a lot of people are hesitant to go into that. Another thing that I think we face in the Midwest is the average age of farmers in this area are getting up there. I hit the 60 mark just a week ago, and I know a lot of farmers that are older than me that are still at it. So to try to get them to take on new ideas at this point in their career, they're just going to coast on out doing what they're doing. So I threw out a lot of reasons, but that doesn't make these people bad. They're just happy where they're at, and they're successful where they're at. So they choose not to look into other avenues for conservation benefits, I feel.
If you have a question, raise your hand, I'll give you a card.
So I would say, I'm a beginning farmer, and I tend to follow some of the national statistics about beginning farmers. Beginning farmers in the U.S. these days tend to be from non-farm backgrounds. 60%, maybe more by now, tend to be interested in using organic farming methods. But for beginning farmers to be successful, they need more technical assistance and other support programs to learn about a lifetime of farming. So luckily I have lots of friends, but there's not who farm, who are willing to answer my questions, but there aren't a lot of, there's not a lot of extension support locally, like there are in some other states to help beginning farmers. And I would say it's interesting coming back as a individual woman farmer. I'm not the farmer's wife farming, I'm running my own business and I'm the farmer. And I'm the only woman who has an NRCS contract, and I'm the only woman who this year rented the no-till seed drill from Lakefield. So it's interesting being an independent woman farmer here, so that's sometimes a bit of a challenge. And not that this has ever stopped me, because I always seem to be a little bit different and walk my own path, but I'm trying to grow food for my community, and a lot of the farmers in Northwest Iowa grow more commodity crops. We have larger land and commodities, so this is a bit different. And I'm trying to grow food for my community in a place where people can see it, because I think it's really important for people to be connected where their food's coming from, and for kids. I mean, you would be really surprised, I think, all the kids who live in our rural town who don't understand where their food comes from, even though they see farmland all around them. And so I'm trying to raise livestock in a watershed, but do it in a way where the nutrients are going to be staying in the farm, and where we're building really good organic matter, and there's not going to be runoff. I'm working with NRCS. The plan's really solid, but it's really new and scary for people. So we've had some community resistance, but I think that that's all just a really good opportunity for education. And every time people try my chicken, or hopefully my other meat as it comes down the line, they'll be won over by these different kinds of practices. So you don't learn if you don't see challenges ahead.
What's an NRCS contract?
It's the Natural Resource Conservation Service. So every county has one, it's a federal agency, and they support a lot of these conservation practices that a lot of farmers at the table here are using. Like, they support the prairie strips. For me, they're helping support a transition from, my farm was 15 years as a sod farm, and now it's, then it was in 15 years in corn and soybean rotation, and now I've transitioned it to a rotational grazing. So they've supported the infrastructure, putting in the pasture seed, helping me with some fencing, and improving the soil with conservation practices.
Okay, we'll give you a few minutes here. Do the panelists have any questions of each other that you'd like to ask each other?
Okay, well, here's a
Come on.
We were sure. You can think about that for a second while I ask you the next one, which is for some of the city folks in the room, if you can give a little more description of what is till, no-till, strip till, yeah, kind of how that works.
Generally, I think if you think back a period of years and, maybe your grandparents, you saw things like moldboard plows and discs that were doing full width tillage, turning soil over, moving it, making a number of trips. I mean, when I was young, actually, I don't know how many times we went over a field, but it was a lot. When I mentioned going to ridge till in '88, that really was a system where we were literally building a ridge when we cultivated, row crop cultivated after the crop was up, and we were planting right into the top of that without doing any tillage. Very little that, this was kind of an area where that was kind of a hot item, but it was really a little bit of a spin-off from maybe no-till and dealt with some of the cold soils. So now when we talk no-till, is exactly that. We're going in, I think Keith, I know John, and I'm not that familiar with Jerry, but we talk about no-till and beans, usually we're running, narrow row type equipment that's going in with a disc and it's slotting that, putting that seed in the ground. You're really not you're disturbing very little soil and very little of the residue on top. So you're gonna go by and see a field with a lot of residue on it. In the strip till, in the case of strip till, in my case, I'm running 30-inch rows, so I plant a row every 30 inches. And rather than running a full width tillage where we till all that soil, we're tilling, in my case, I'm running about a 10-inch band. I run ahead of the planter with a couple colders, what we call a trash whipper that throws some trash out. Tilling it a couple inches deep, so you've literally got a strip you plant into, and just like John said, I'm running RTK guidance. I'm very accurate. We do that, come back in and plant right in that same spot. So you're going to see the 20 inches in there that isn't tilled, that still has residue, and so that's kind of a quick. You guys may have better.
What's RTK?
What's RT guidance?
Oh, RTK would be a very accurate type of auto steer. It's real-time kinetics, but it's just a sub-inch accuracy, repeatable as you come back. There's a lot of different levels today. A lot of the equipment you see when you drive down the road is actually using global positioning satellites and that equipment to steer, setting up their lines, and even as they make passes across the field. When we talk RTK, it's just a very accurate system. It's kind of, there's different levels. So I don't know, Jerry or John, if you want to add to that.
No, you covered it very well, I thought. Actually, the one thing with the strip till, in the northern half of the United States, our soils are a little colder than it would be, say, down in Missouri or Indiana, Illinois. And that helps because what it does is, yes, you're still doing a little bit of tillage, but it's in a very small area, but it builds a berm there about 2-3 inches tall when you're done in the fall. And that will settle a little bit, but by doing that, it has a fast warm up in the spring. So when you plant, that seed gets into a nice warm soil, it's dried out because it's raised slightly, and it just takes off immediately.
I'm trying to figure out how to summarize some of these questions, because there's lots of great questions from the audience in particular. One is, I heard that one of the worst impacts of climate change is heavier rains, torrential rains, and greater erosion. And wondering if that's correct in your experience, if you're seeing heavier rains here or not, or has that always been a challenge? and how you're dealing with that challenge.
Well, I personally think yes, weather is changing, and I follow Dr. Elwin Taylor out of Ames. He's been tracking weather for over 400 to 500 years. And if you ever get a chance to listen to him, he does a very good job of explaining it. Yes, we are seeing heavier deluges in the spring. Now, some of that man-made, probably. My answer to that is we're seeing some ways around that with our cover crops. We just finished harvesting a field last night. Nancy wouldn't have got that field harvested if we didn't have the cover growing in there, because that root system held up that combine, which I don't know how much that thing weighs. It got 500 bushel grain tanks on, probably weighs 80,000 pounds. But we had areas, I know, years before where we didn't have cover crops. We've been stuck. And just by having that there, it helped us out, so.
So another question here is about organic farming. Kate, I know your method of farming is very different, and primarily animal production, right? Yeah. So for the others of you, there's a question of when my dad and brother switched to organic farming 20 plus years ago, seeing higher yields than when they were using chemicals. Is it something you have thought about at all, and is there, or you see other methods that work better for you rather than organic? Or do you have feelings on organic and what that means for us?
I'll try to answer that, but for myself, I've had very good luck with the farming practices I've been using more traditional herbicides, but integrating cover crops into my strip till and no-till. I do believe that I've cut back on my herbicides, and I'm pulling back more every year. I'm not gonna be probably true organic, and somewhat like I explained about other farmers, things are sometimes a little hard to change. We're set up just for commercial grain production. We don't farm all that much, but we do have a cow-calf operation. But we have decreased the amount of pesticides that we apply to our acres, primarily because of the reduced tillage we've done. We have different weed species that we have to address, and with cover crops, we're also seeing them pull back. So we're able to reduce, but I guess I never really looked at going true organic. I know people that have done organic. I know there's a large chicken facility over south of Harris, and they had quite an organic operation. A good friend of mine managed that. They were making probably 6 more trips a year over their fields to manage their fields organically than what we do. And with my seed business and my time obligations with calving and the like, that doesn't fit my operation very well. So that would be my reason why I'm not taking a more serious look at organic. I've got some other friends that, due to the cost of seed, have moved away from some of the traits and thought that Roundup wasn't paying its way, and they're fighting a lot of weed pressure now. So I guess at this point, I'm pretty happy where I'm at. I'm able to do a pretty decent job farming with the conservation practices I have incorporated. So I don't believe I'll be going full organic, but that doesn't mean that I'm not doing the right thing for sustainability into the future.
I'd probably echo a lot of what John said. I certainly think there's a place for organic, and there's individuals like Kate and those that can make it work. It's great. On a large scale, it becomes a challenge, and that's what we saw with that operation you talked about. The management, and you also have to remember that, like John talked about earlier, with older farmers, and particularly most of us deal with older landlords. Sometimes making those changes we have to think about the economics of, keeping landlords happy. If they're not happy, there's a lot of things involved out here that, dictate. Traditionally, I've not run into landlords that are really excited about doing those different things. Yeah, they like what I do, with doing very little tillage, but they don't really demand that, and I don't hear many landlords out there saying they want to see that, you know, it's too bad, but for most of them, it's, you know, there's an economic reason they want all the rent they can get, or they want a return on their investment, so those are some things that probably enter into it too.
Then, Kate, I just want to ask you, why is it that you chose organic and when you were looking to get into farming?
Well, I've just always loved, I think I grew up a naturalist and I've always loved wildlife and conservation. And so for me, organic farming was a perfect blend of ecology and food and community and social justice. So I feel like organic farming allows me to manage an agroecological system, which is just really exciting to me. And I feel like it values soil health as one of the main principles and builds up from there. So it's quite an opportunity to be able to manage an ecological system to grow food for your community. That's just kind of one of the drivers for me. So farming with nature.
Okay, here's a key question. How has your organic matter changed as we've watched all these different cover cropping methods?
I'll just be real quick, but, you know, I look back to, and I've done, as I know John has, a lot of what we call grid soil sampling, where we've done smaller blocks in the field. We've made those smaller, come back and soil sample probably every 4 years. If I go out and pull those yield tests or those soil tests out over a period of 20 plus years, I've definitely seen an increase in organic matter by not doing tillage. Now, I have not been doing any cover crops, so, but I know not doing tillage, and one of the things you'll see, one of the challenges of people going into a minimum or no-till type or strip-till type situation is it takes a couple years for your soils to really work well. I guess sometimes you're dealing with some compaction and some issues. In any of those cases, I've seen, you know, you get out 3-4 years of not doing a lot of tillage and ruining that soil structure, you'll start to see a real benefit as far as water infiltration and how soil works. So I'll pass it on.
Actually, we have a farm that was mined gravel I believe about 10, 12 years ago. They say our prairie soils in this area had an organic matter of about between 7 and 8%. When you get done mining gravel, you really don't have any organic matter left. And my wife Nancy said we should put that into conservation reserve. But I didn't. I wanted to see if we could bring it back. And we have used alfalfa on it first, right after we were done. And it's had corn and soybeans ever since, but it has had cover crops. Our organic matter is testing 4.4 at this time on that farm. So you can build organic matter by using the cover crops, but it's also the fungi and the bacteria is in your soil. And one thing, tillage does ruin that. It's got to start all over. So it takes a long time to get that going. So and it's like he said, you won't see a big change right away. But after about 3 years, you really start seeing a change with water infiltration and the things that are happening. We currently have one field on our home farm that's had alfalfa on it twice. I truly think we're going to be pushing 7% or more organic matter when we rotate this alfalfa out this time.
I agree with what they're both saying. I look at it the same way, and like Jerry, I've had alfalfa on my home farm ever since we've been farming there. So I like the rotation between the corn, beans, and alfalfa, and bringing in cover crops. To me, the plant diversity we're bringing in with cover crops, because we're using some cereal rye or annual rye along with radishes, turnips, rapeseed, and forage collard. That enhances the biological diversity below the surface of the soil. The bugs and the bacteria that are alive and promote the soil health and improve the organic matter levels in the soil. So I started dabbling on the cover crops about 5 years ago, and I actually purchased my cover crop seed from Jerry, and I value his input into selecting some mixes, and I'm seeing where it's paying the benefits. I'm doing it on 2 of my rented farms where my cattle can graze them sometimes, but I'm also on one of my farms. We had a field day this fall, and on that field I've had cover crops there 3 of the last 5 years, and it's C&D slopes, fairly big hills. There's over 70 feet of elevation change in a 130 acre field. So there's a lot of slope in that field. And those fields, having been farmed like Scott and I grew up, where they moldboard plowed everything, the topsoil was thin to start with. It got eroded away, and it's yellow clay hills. So I feel anything I can do with no-till and strip-till and cover crops to restore that back to its productivity that it had 80 or 100 years ago is to my benefit. Even though I don't own that farm, I've got a good lease arrangement with my landlord, and they've got no intention of moving me off, but I want to see what I can do to improve that soil health back. And I think there's a fair amount of people that are committed that way in the area.
We had a workshop just before this, we broke into 3 of them, but one of them was specifically looking at the Farm Bill. So the question to you as farmers is, what would you like to see in the Farm Bill that would support these conservation practices that all of you are putting in place? What would make that easier? What parts of the Farm Bill already are good that are supporting that we need to make sure stay in the Farm Bill?
You know more than I do.
Otherwise, I'll look at Kate, who's done more policy work.
Well, yeah, you know, I think CSP,
What's CSP?
Conservation Stewardship Program, which I've been a part of for a number of years, where we're actually getting paid, you know, get some financial help for doing the practices like that I do and John does. You know, it's been kind of a benefit. In the past, we've traditionally always given money to somebody to do something new, which is good. That's how you entice people in. But you always had people that were already doing good things that never really got anything for it, anything extra. So it's kind of a prize, so to speak, for doing, you know, the right things. And there's a process you go through with to get that. It's a 5-year contract, I believe. The cost share programs are pretty good. I've been off as a soil commissioner for several years, so I'm not quite as up to speed with them, but the cost share programs in particular, I know for cover crops, have been, you know, they've been an incentive to get some people looking at those. So I don't know if I can think off the top of my head anything new, but I think you've got to continue those types of things.
I would agree with that. Probably if I had a change in the Farm Bill or anything, Conservation Reserve program's been good, but I think those rates gotta align with the local rental rates. Right now, Conservation Reserve contracts are about $100 an acre higher than what land's renting for in this area, and it's eating up some land that's really not, probably not as beneficial to that program. Good farm ground is going into Conservation Reserve because they meet the criteria for possibly a pollinator habitat or something like that. I'm not opposed to that, but we have ground that's fragile, that has been farmed in the last 5 years, that it wasn't farmed prior to that because of $7 and $8 corn. Guys broke land out, they took it out of CRP, and those farms aren't getting back in. So if I had a chance to get something changed on the Farm Bill, it would be to kind of target the CRP acres at the more fragile lands, rather than taking good productive farm ground out of production and bidding up rates against people that are trying to stay in the business.
One Farm Bill issue that we've been working on is expanding organic research, because we feel that organic research really benefits all farmers. A lot of the cover crop research came out of organic programs. Organic farmers have been using cover crops for 30 years, and so that's just really innovative ecological research that benefits all farmers. And so there's a bill right now in the House called the Organic Research Act that Iowa Representative David Young just signed on to as a co-sponsor. I'm not saying organic is the only way, but it does provide a real opportunity for Iowa farmers. There's a huge demand for organic corn and soybeans in this country, and Iowa is posed to really be able to meet that demand here locally. And, you know, we have the farmers to do it, and it's a great opportunity, especially for farmers coming back on the farm. So more organic research would be one thing that I think is something to push for in this farm bill, because it does promote all these conservation practices that can be used from conventional and organic farmers. And then we've been looking for expanded opportunities within the EQIP program. There's an organic initiative that has a very small cap on it. And so expanding that cap so that it's the same as the general program, so that we have better tracking about what farmers' practices are coming into that program, and the same for CSP, making an organic initiative within that to just attract farmers who could continually improve their conservation to enter those federal programs.
Can you explain what CSP is and what's the expanded cap? What's that for again?
Okay, CSP is a program that you sign up for, and it does have a limit. There's a $40,000 cap on that. And then you sign up for practices you maybe weren't doing right now, and that changes from year to year. We do have an NRCS person here, I think, that probably will correct me if I'm wrong. The practices do change from year to year, but they're trying to promote strip tillage, no tillage, and cover crops, along with a lot of other things like rotational grazing, so things like that. I think they're very good programs. They help a lot of farmers get started trying some new things, and they're good for the soil. I'm also a little concerned. There's been some talk of, cutting out crop insurance. Well, that saved this country a lot of money from the ad hoc programs where they used to have a disaster. Oh, we'll give you that money, and you maybe got it 2 years later if you're lucky. It's worked very well. What I'd like to see, and Risk Management Agency, which runs crop insurance, I've actually been on meetings where they've said, oh, when there's a disaster, we found the people using cover crops are not turning in claims. Their crops are more resilient. I said, okay, give us a discount. Or charge the other guys more, I don't care, but let's make it worthwhile. And I see they're telling me we're out of time, so.
We're going to take this and shift our program a little bit. So first I want to thank all of our panelists. And specifically, I want to thank you not only for being good stewards of our land and of this common land that we all share, but also for your courage in taking on these new challenges and being examples to fellow farmers and being the ones that they can come to see how it works, because somebody's got to step out there and try it first, and I really admire all of you for your courage in doing that. With that, I'm going to Roger explain how we're going to do this breakout sessions, because this will give you a little small group time with one farmer.
Each of you received a number, I think, or pulled a number. Paul? Ones, twos, and threes will stay in here. Fours and fives will go down to the library, which is just down the sidewalk here. What we're going to do...
Hold the mic.
Okay. Do I need to repeat?
Yeah.
Ones, twos, and threes will stay in this room. Fours and fives will go down to the library, which is just down the sidewalk here.
That way.
See the numbers, 1, 2, 3.
Library.
What we're going to do is I've got a sheet here that I'm going to hand out to each group. You probably can have more than one sheet here. You'll basically have 15 minutes. You'll need to choose a recorder to write down your discussion and what you're going to be doing. Your first challenge is to identify the challenges or main challenge or challenges you feel needs to be tackled. If you identify more than one, you probably should prioritize them. Then realizing what we've experienced today and in past years, whatever, we will, and what we think we'll continue to experience, and what changes in our food production system may arise, and what will we continue to experience. How do we cope with the changes? What side effects do you anticipate? What unforeseen impediments are possible? What do we plan? How do we plan? How can we build a unified team to achieve common goals. How can we support one another?
Yep, you're gonna solve all the problems in the world in 15 minutes.
Come back with one
Pick
challenge
challenge.
and one
Yeah.
opportunity for you to help them and for you to ask them what you need.
And you'll need, in addition to your recorder, you'll need one person from your group to present what you've covered in that 15 minutes. We'll discuss it then after you get back in here.
You actually have 20. So we're going to let 4 and 5 leave first. So Scott, find your recorder and a recorder. If you have a 5, go with Scott.
We're gonna go to Lincoln next door.
Okay, yeah.
And John.
If you are a 4, go with John. John?